Hello guys, welcome to another FU Money podcast, and today live streaming again as usual during the week. Right now, that's what I'm doing, but today we have a special live guest here, and you for sure know him from also different podcast, which is Simply Bitcoin. But I'm just going to ask you guys to forgive me. You know Murphy's Law, of course, and today I am expecting a delivery from Apple, and they scheduled it to this afternoon, so I could not change it. And if for some reason the doorbell rings, you guys know I have to get away for 30 seconds, get the package and come back, but I will already apologize for that, and I'm sure the guest will take care of the live stream today if that happens. Okay, so let's go, and instead of introducing this guest, I'm going to allow this video to introduce him by himself. So let's go and watch the video.
Is toxic Bitcoin maximalism, does that drive away people? If it does, is it good? Is it bad? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, the way that I see it, it's necessary, right? And why do I mean it's necessary? Like, let's look back in the last 3 months what happened, right? We had Charlie Munger, who had the audacity to call Bitcoin disgusting, and he said it was the wrong step for human civilization. Meanwhile, I'm talking to Venezuelans that are buying Bitcoin, not like we buy Bitcoin here in the West for number go up technology. They're buying it to survive, right? Then you have Marathon or Marapool, right? That recently, because of the toxicity of Bitcoin maximalists, right? I think we played a role in them changing their course, right? Because essentially what they were doing is attacking Bitcoin with their clean blocks and OFAC compliant blocks, and they weren't signaling for Taproot. So I believe that if toxicity wasn't a thing, there would be no pressure on them. And last but not least, of course, there's Elon, right? Who goes to his millions of followers and just tells them Doge. And remember, these people, they don't have any experience, so he's like funneling him in the right direction, and you just check out every single one of Elon's tweets, and man, you just see a bunch of Bitcoiners going at him, and there's no other way, right? So not only do I think Bitcoin toxicity is important, I think it's absolutely necessary, and if you're against Bitcoin toxicity, you're against Bitcoin, and if you're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom, period.
And without further delay, here it is, Nico from Simply Bitcoin. Thanks for joining the live stream today. Let me just put us like this. And a fellow pleb and a fellow maximalist and a toxic one for sure. Welcome to the stream, Nico. How are you?
What's up, man? I'm super happy to be here. How you doing?
All good here, all good, and thank you very much for accepting. So I know a little bit about you, and of course I follow Simply Bitcoin podcast. And I heard also I watched the interview you had with Tone Vase, and of course I learned a bit more about you from that interview. Of course, there's a part where you discuss a bit of your life. Would you like to share with the viewers today also how you started? I know that you come from Venezuela, then you migrated to the United States, right? And would you like to tell us a bit of how you started your life and then migrated to the States, what happened, and then your story until you got to Bitcoin?
Yeah, so my dad was an entrepreneur, so he migrated out of Venezuela, and I mean, I don't know how far back I should go, but my dad was an entrepreneur. He ran a business overseas, so he migrated out of Venezuela, but I still lived in Venezuela. My grandma, he would just leave me back there. So I grew up, I would say, a big portion of my life in Venezuela, and then my parents would take me with them on adventures, and yeah, man. So I'm a little bit of a mutt, but it's very common to have people like me, especially in Miami. So in Miami, I feel right at home because you have a lot of people with Hispanic heritage. That have one foot in the United States and one foot in Latin America. I just happen to be from Venezuela. And that, coincidentally, right, Venezuela, I would say it was in 2016. It was going through, I would say, a very turbulent time where the economy wasn't it wasn't dollarized yet. So essentially, what that means is that there's this weird currency situation there where the government would set an official exchange rate for the currency, but there was a black market rate on the street. So it'd be really strange because officially things were priced, they were cheap, especially from American standards, but they were still relatively, what you would pay for something. But the black market rate, meaning what everyone would actually pay for things, was significantly cheaper. So that created an opportunity. So in 2016, I wasn't in a really good spot in my life. I was struggling a lot. And I remember my cousin came from Venezuela. He came to me to visit where I was staying. I was staying in my friend's couch in Miami. And he came to me. He's like, and I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you up to?" And at that time, I wasn't doing so hot. And he's like, I have these Bitcoin. I mean, no, not even Bitcoin. I have these machines that essentially print magic internet money. And I was completely fascinated. I said, "Oh my God, tell me everything you need to know. I mean, tell me everything I need to know." And that's where my rabbit hole journey began, right? And I was super blessed. And at that time, I don't know whether it was out of desperation or because I was curious. Maybe it was a little bit of both. But man, I just jumped straight into the rabbit hole, and the rest is history. I just haven't looked back ever since.
That's really cool to know all this. So at what age did you migrate to the United States?
So I migrated, I would say around 9 or 10 years old, around there.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was watching your Simply Bitcoin podcast, and it was a really interesting coincidence that the first episode you published was on the 28th of July 2020, and that's exactly my birthday.
Oh.
So I was really surprised by that. And of course, I've been following Simply Bitcoin. I did not know this podcast until I saw you on Bitcoin 2021, of course, the conference. But then I started to follow you, and I follow every day, and I really enjoy you and Phil there, and all the news and the fails. But I also know that you guys lately don't really like to discuss about technical analysis.
Yeah,
So,
that's a really good question. So there's so many channels on YouTube, trying to draw lines and telling you, hey, this is where the price is going to go. And with this pattern and this pattern, this like the R, the MS. Listen, I'm not saying any of those things are wrong, but I can tell you something. If you focus on the price is the noise, right? A lot of people are missing out on the revolution, what's happening right here, They get into Bitcoin thinking, hey, I'm going to get rich, right? And if you get into Bitcoin with that attitude, what tends to happen is a lot of the shitcoins start to become very attractive because you think that you're going to find the next 100x. So we don't talk about that because that's not really what's happening here. What's happening here is a monetary revolution, the likes of which mankind has never seen before, right? So that's why we avoid the price altogether, because the important part here is the world is changing, and it's happening it's interesting because usually when a technology gets invented or when there's some type of shift, it happens mainly in the United States, then or from China or from Europe, right? But what you're seeing here is the opposite. You're seeing this shift from the developing world, and then last it's going to hit the developed worlds, and that's because of how the legacy financial system is set up. the legacy financial system is set up where the countries with the most powerful money printers, Europe, China, the United States, have the least to benefit from hyper Bitcoinization, right? Where developing countries that were suffering the most under the legacy financial system have the most to benefit from moving to Bitcoin, which is why you see El Salvador as one of the first countries to make Bitcoin legal tender. And Nayib Bukele is going to look like an absolute genius, in the next halving cycle. So 2024, he is going to look like, this guy's going to look like a genius. And what's going to happen is other countries are going to look and they're going to say, why can't we be doing that? And it's very simple. Just look at the incentives, right? A huge percentage of El Salvador's economy is remittances. So they're paying an arm and a leg to, these third-party Western Union remittance companies, right? And then all of a sudden, there's a technology that allows the people of El Salvador to save up to 30% just sending and receiving money, right? And this is the story that you hear from country to country to country to country, right? You hear the same question, the same issue in the Kingdom of Tonga. We had Lord Fusuita, which is a huge fan of Bitcoin. He was talking about the same problem about, the people of Tonga receiving remittances and them just getting crushed, right? And then you also have people that used to live in countries that have experienced hyperinflation already, and they already don't trust the government, So that's how this revolution is going to happen. It's going to happen from the ground up. It's going to happen from the opposite side of what you're used to seeing in terms of technology.
Yeah, but I was asking you about TA because I have a pearl here from your first episode. Sorry for being mean. Let me just
play it.
Let me just play this from your first episode.
Awesome. So what do we got next? We got next is the awesome news of the day, and today's pretty fucking easy with the news, guys, because man, it's what everyone's talking about on Twitter, and it is
screen share.
The massive pump. And I'm going to kind of explain to you what all these lines are. So if you guys see this green line, this is 10,500.
So it seems you know a little bit about TI, right? you actually know what the lines mean.
If you spend time in this space, you definitely start to draw lines because, you're like, oh my God, the price. But I think that, the longer you spend down the rabbit hole, and, when you start a show, we didn't know what we were doing, right? The show starts to take form, after a couple months, you start to hit stride, right? Our show's a little bit different, right? Most people do live streams. Most people do what I call long format conversation, right? Which is, just a long unedited thing, right? Our show is produced, our show's edited, right? Yeah. So we could take advantage of adding graphics, adding little things like that. And we felt, again, like the TA really is the noise. There's so many other YouTubers that do that, then they do a really good job at it, right? So we wanted to stay away from that completely, so we did do a shift, right? And you'll see if you compare the first episode to one of the last episodes we did, you'll see the ginormous leap that we've taken.
Yeah, and
right?
the lightnings,
and again,
lightnings that you use and all that. Yeah. But you also made a prediction in this video, and I want to check if you were right, okay?
Let's see. Let's check it out.
There's a major resistance line. Let me explain to you guys why. So, if we zoom out to the 5-year, we've kind of been going on this downtrend, right? You see this blue line, this downtrend? This green line was the all-time high of February 10th, 2020, February 10th, right? So we were kind of, it was just making lower lows, right? Today was a massive day because all of a sudden we broke that $10,500 resistance. So we broke the downtrend of December 11, 2017. And today was the fucking day. And it's huge. Not only did we break the $10,500 area, man, we fucking rocket that shit up, bro. We went all the way to, right now we're at $11,228. So this makes me super bullish for the end of the year. My opinion is I think we're going to end of the year. I think we're going to hit 15, 20K. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you had,
Not so bad.
yeah, you had a prediction of 15, 20K to the end of the year. So let's see here what happened in the end of the year. So this is the yellow circle that represents the end of 2020. And Bitcoin so the opening of this candle here, which is the middle of December, was opening exactly 19,160. Man, you should be a technical analyst.
So it's funny because what a lot of people don't understand about Bitcoin is that it's like clockwork. And the thing is designed to go up. That's the secret. That's the thing that people have such a hard time believing. But how the halving structured is cycled, how it's structured, right? It creates this artificial supply shock. And it happens about a year and a half after the halving, right? So, a lot of people are talking about the super cycle now and this and this and that. I don't know if I believe that. We'll see. But, you could, especially if you've been in this space long enough, your gut will start to give you a pretty good idea of where we think the price is going to go. But again, we don't like to focus on that. We don't like to sell hopium, like people say. But hey, we were just starting out. We were experimenting with the things that we liked, the things that we didn't like. And, we decided to stay away from that. But of course, being Bitcoiners, right, you always check, you check the price, that's part of the process, I guess. I think nowadays you do it less and less and less and less. And I really, the thing that really excites me these days is the public Lightning network capacity, because that thing is really going to the moon. It's just growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. So yeah, man, really exciting stuff. What's going on?
Really exciting. And today, by the way, you were discussing this on your first video of Simply Bitcoin. And today we are also, getting really high again, above 50K. So that's another really nice coincidence. I have a few more pearls, but let's leave it to the end of the stream. I would just like to ask you also, how did you meet Phil? No one knows this. No one knows this. No one asked you this before, I guess.
Yeah, how it's, most people, it's really interesting what's happening, right? Because the more you go down the rabbit hole, the less in common you have with the people that you used to hang out with in normie life, because they're still plugged into what I call the fiat matrix, right? And they're still,
I understand that.
their mind is just not on the same wavelength as you. So you start to befriend more and more the people that more and more of the Bitcoiners, and because of how it really is structured, most of them are online, right? So I remember I came up with the idea for Simply Bitcoin, and I wanted to do it with somebody, but I needed the right person. I needed to be the right fit in terms of personality, because this was something that I was going to do every day. And I remember I was doing a podcast at the time, my original podcast, but I wanted to do something more because I had so much time on my hands. And the first person I asked was Phil, and he was just someone that I had on my podcast. We got along super well, and I approached him. I said, hey, I told him the idea, and he said, yeah, I love it. Let's do it. So that's essentially how it happened. We met online. He just happened to be one of the people that came on my pod, and we had a really good energy talking back and forth. And I feel like that's very important. I also liked his work ethic, because I saw that he was posting his podcast once a week, right? So when you're about to do something with somebody, especially if you're doing it every single day, right, you definitely want someone that works hard, and you definitely want someone that you connect with your personalities just click, you know. So it was a good pick, I think.
So, well, that's nice to know. Someday I will have to have Phil also here, and maybe you too at the same time when I grow the studio. So why starting Simply Bitcoin? What are the goals? What was the main reason behind starting this channel, this podcast, and what are you trying to achieve with that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, listen, Bitcoin gave me purpose again. It really, you know, when I first was introduced to Bitcoin, I was at a really low place in my life, and Bitcoin, you know, gave me a reason to live again, right? You know, it gave me a career, it gave me success. So, you know, I promised myself at least that, oh, hold on, my computer's dying. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I thought I had my charger plugged in. I apologize.
No worries. No worries. If the doorbell rings, you have to help me out too. So
I will. I promise. I promise. But no. But what I was saying is that look, there were so many shitcoin channels on YouTube at the time. So many of these channels would sell, you know, hopium, right? Which is they tell you, listen, this coin could potentially 100x. And this coin could potentially do this. And the reason that they're so popular is because all those shows are produced, right? If you look at them, they're actually very well made. The thumbnails are actually very well done. So it attracts people, right? So I figured, I'm like, why don't I use the same formula, but for Bitcoin, right? So that's what I wanted to do, right? And I've always loved YouTube. My generation grew up on YouTube, right? You know, a lot of the YouTubers like PewDiePie, the gaming channels, right? That was always a big thing. So I always loved YouTube, and I'm like, why not just do this? But instead of just selling lies and selling this coin's going to go to this, why don't you just sell, hey, look, you know, here's Bitcoin news, here's Bitcoin stuff. Of course, it's a lot harder, right? Because you're competing against channels that are telling you, you're going to get rich, right? We're just talking to you about the news, right? So it's a lot more boring. But at the same time, we try to deliver the signal, right? If you actually listen to what we're saying, we're actually providing you value versus the other channels that are just telling you you're going to get rich, right? We don't say that. We just say, listen, buy Bitcoin, opt out, take your sovereignty back, take your wealth back into your possession, right? And you know, the rest is history. The community has received it super well, and we're super grateful for that. And yeah, man, it's absolutely amazing.
Oh man, I'm on Facebook, and I go to a few groups there. I'm, you know, registered to a few groups about crypto, but there is no crypto. There is shit coins and Bitcoin. I learned this from you guys. And you can't imagine how many people just ask, what should I buy today to get rich and stuff like that. That's fucking amazing how people don't understand Bitcoin still. But anyway, I have one really good question. I think you will not like it. Did you ever have one single shitcoin?
Absolutely. Most Bitcoiners that I've met, they go through the shitcoining phase. We all call it or me and Phil call it the price of tuition, right? Which is kind of the price that you have to pay for entry. And that's really how you get an appreciation for Bitcoin. I was lucky a little bit because I got into Bitcoin through mining. So I always had an appreciation of the hash rate, and I always knew that Bitcoin was superior in terms of, you know, how much computing power is backing up the network, therefore how much security the Bitcoin network has to offer versus everything else. But at the same time, I remember when the fork wars were going on and Bitcoin Cash, you know, was in 2017, it scared the crap out of me because there was 2 times that the Bitcoin Cash hash rate surpass Bitcoin's hash rate. It was
Yeah.
artificial. It wasn't market forces that allowed that to happen, but it was because of Jihan and Bitmain and Roger. They had such a big war chest that they were trying to trick people into show you, listen, Bitcoin Cash is the most secure. Of course, they couldn't keep it up. But as a miner, I'm looking at that, and that was absolutely terrifying. And I did have thoughts like, wow, is this really going to switch? You know, looking back on it, you're like, oh, you know, that was never going to happen. But living through it was definitely very scary. And yeah, of course, you know, the ICO boom happened 2017, and you can't help but to, you know, dabble in, I don't know what I don't remember their names, but you know, all these variety of shit coins. But you know, I would say 2018, 2019, you know, it comes around, right, and the bear market hits you, and then all those shit coins start heading down to zero, and you know, you start selling them off. And then it's funny because it's really the bear market that really shows you that that Bitcoin is king. Bitcoin's the only thing that matters. So I think that's absolutely normal. I have no shame in saying that. I would say most people go through that experience. The only difference, right? Phil's gone through that experience as well. Most Bitcoiners I've had on my podcast go through that experience. The only difference is, do you stay shitcoining or do you learn your lesson, right? Because I think I say this for myself, I say this for Phil, right? I would have more Bitcoin today if I didn't shitcoin, right? So that's just a matter of fact. And if you look, and here's the,
I will support you right there. I was a rookie in Bitcoin. I started to read about it in 2015, 16, but I only started to buy it in 2017, in the beginning of the year, before the first major bull run that we all remember. But I also bought a few shitcoins in January 2018 when they were just following Bitcoin just a few weeks after. And I also got wrecked. So this was what I paid for my lesson. And I still remember having Salt. I don't know if you remember this shitcoin, which was created by, what's his name? The guy was also in 2021 conference. And he was booed all the time because he was talking about shitcoins there. I forgot his name.
I forget, but
yeah,
it definitely sounds familiar.
So I got wrecked because it went to zero, and I didn't sell any of those shitcoins, and it went to zero, absolute zero.
Yeah, shitcoins are dangerous, man, and you know, it's funny because this year, this cycle, you're not seeing so much you're not seeing the ICOs, because the ICOs were made illegal by the SEC. They really went after that. Now you're seeing NFTs. That's the new trick, right? For these developers to
invisible
steal
rocks
from you because
invisible rocks.
Yeah, it's so stupid. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
I still don't get it. But yeah.
What do you think about CBDCs? What's your opinion on that? And the Panopticon they are going to create, of course.
So yeah, see, that's an interesting question. So look, a lot of people are like, they think that Bitcoin is competing with shitcoins. That's not the case, right? The case is Bitcoin will have, they serve different purposes, but the world that we're heading into right now is a world of Bitcoiner slavery, right? What do I mean by that? I mean, you have freedom money, you have freedom enabling money, right? Which is the freedom to transact and to hold your wealth without the government or anybody, you know, potentially debasing that or confiscating that from you or censoring who you can and you cannot transact with. And on the other hand, you have the future of fiat, the future of where it's going to go, and that's central bank digital currencies, right? And what central bank digital currencies is going to allow governments to do is to have complete and total control over your life. If they don't like how you're spending your money, if they think that you are too toxic to the environment for whatever reason, if they don't like if they don't like your political sayings, if they don't like what you've been saying on the internet, right? They potentially lower, you know, what we call the social credit system that you have. You get lower points. And then all of a sudden, from your central bank digital currency wallet, you are not going to be able to spend, right? You're not going to be able to buy certain things, right? If you don't believe me, Look at what's already going on in China, right? That's exactly what they do. If your social credit score is too low, they don't allow your kid to go to join certain schools. They don't allow you to buy certain train tickets. They don't allow you to buy first class tickets, right? And then I know what you're saying. There's no way this is going to happen to the West. Well, it already is happening to the West. Yeah. If you remember what happened in January 6th, whatever your idea is of it, of course, right? A lot of the, the protesters that were involved or insurrectionists, doesn't matter where you are in the political spectrum, it doesn't matter, right? A lot of them, they got jailed and they got debanked. The same, like, you get banned from Twitter and that's it. Well, they got deplatformed from the financial system, and now they're considered unbankable, right? You have Michael Flynn, where they canceled his credit cards, right? And they said, listen, we don't want to get involved with you. So it's already that money is extremely political. The U.S. has been using the dollar as a political weapon, really, and now they're starting to use it on their own citizens, on which they don't agree with their politics. And again, I want to specify, put your politics aside. It doesn't matter if you lean left on or you lean right on the subject. What matters is that you have people being censored, not being able to spend from their bank account because of something that the government doesn't agree with them with. That's absolutely terrifying. And central bank digital currencies are going to enable that times 100. Right. And then on the other side, you have this awesome, hopeful future where you have Bitcoin, right, where the government's not even involved. Right. They can't tell you what to do. They can't censor your transactions, and it empowers you tremendously. Right. So that's the future we're heading into. And central bank digital currencies, I suspect a lot of normies, right, a lot of no coiners are going to fall into that honey trap because governments are going to incentivize them with helicopter money, or hey, listen, here's your free, but a lot of these normals, they don't understand where's that coming from. That money is just being printed out of thin air. It's worthless.
And the helicopter money is already going because people are getting those checks.
There you go. So it's so scary, and that's why it's so important for people like me and you that make Bitcoin content to just get the word out and just try to convince so many people. That's why I said what I said at the Bitcoin conference. I remember that whole morning, I was like, okay, what can I say to get people, to like make people understand,
to make an impact,
that we are fighting. Exactly. We're fighting a war right now. This is what people don't understand, because there's no one dying. There's no one getting shot and whatever. But we're still fighting a war. We're fighting an information war, right? You have to be very clear. You're fighting a war for the freedom of mankind. That's just how it is, right? And Bitcoiners are on the front line of that war by tweeting, by making funny posts, by memeing, by making content. We're trying to get the truth out. That's what we're trying to do, right? So this is what's at stake, right? And you know what's going to suck? It's the developed countries. It's the fact that you live in the United States. It's the fact that you live in Europe. You're going to be the one that has to deal with the CBDCs, because the developing world, they're going to skip that altogether. They're going to go straight to Bitcoin, so we have a hell of a fight in front of us. That's for sure.
It's happening already. El Salvador is already happening. But just before we go to El Salvador, what do you think about, I get a lot of shit every day because of being a maximalist in Telegram and different groups I go, and people just, they hate maximalists there, and I have to take shit every day. But then I just throw them back with all those hacks in DeFi, and you discuss a lot about this in your podcast, all those hacks that happen, people losing all their money, and just because, some guy is coding some smart contract and he doesn't understand anything about that, and is putting people's money at risk. What do you do in your daily life just to try to explain people about this, the hacks and DeFi and all that shit, and that you can lose your money?
Look, I've gotten a lot more, I would say, impatient lately. I just tell people, if they want to shitcoin, I always just say, have fun staying poor. okay, I don't have time, but I do try to educate as many people as I can with Bitcoin. I've been educating people in Bitcoin for almost 6 years, 5 years now. And I try to give them a hardware wallet as much as I can. I say only Bitcoin. And one of the main pitches that I say is like, look, everything else is centralized, right? Everything has a head man that kind of dictates the rules, right? It's very similar to what's going on today with the fiat system.
Or a company, in the case of Ethereum, they have almost 60% of their servers running on Amazon. So it's completely centralized, and people continue to say that Ethereum is decentralized.
Well, not only that, right? You have a man.
Yeah.
You have a man in charge. You have Vitalik, who he comes up with a new idea and the whole system changes, and then it does a hard fork, right? You have Charles Hodgkinson, the same thing, right? So if you're trying to separate, which is the end goal here, money from state, because it's been completely corrupted, because a politician gets into power, wins an election, and all of a sudden they have access to this unlimited money printer that pays for any crazy idea they come up in their head, whether that's go to war with a country, go with a policy that makes everyone's life miserable, whatever it is. That's not fair, right? And now we finally have this possibility of separating the money away from the politicians, right, and empowering the people in the process. But the only money that's going to be able to do that is the money that's decentralized enough, that has enough computational power backing up the network that it could withstand a nation state attack. Now, Bitcoin has already done this. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people, Bitcoin did that this year when China banned Bitcoin mining. The hash rate took a huge drop. The price followed, right? And it was terrifying. I mean, you've been long enough. It wasn't terrifying to a lot of us because you knew what was going to happen. But
I'm vaccinated against that already.
What's crazy, exactly. So what's crazy is that the in doing so, and what the CCP did is that they made Bitcoin stronger. They further decentralized the hash rate in the process, and the hash rate dropped, but it recovered in record time. And it recovered in record time because of the incentives that Bitcoin provides.
And Bitcoin continued to work as before.
If it wasn't for Bitcoiners saying something on Twitter, no one would have known that happened. Yeah. They would have been like, "That happened? What are you talking about?" Right? So, that really shows how special Bitcoin is. Now, could you say the same thing with Ethereum? Could you say thing with XRP? Could you say no? Because all of those are centralized, and because they're centralized, that means that if they start to become a threat to governments can coerce them. They can manipulate them. They can arrest that single guy, put him in jail, and then what's the network going to do? The price is going to fall because people are thinking Ethereum, Vitalik. Without Ethereum, is there a Vitalik? Could you say a thing with Bitcoin? Who's the guy? You could name a couple people here and there, but if any of us go to jail, if anyone's just disappear, Bitcoin keeps going.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's what makes Bitcoin special, is the decentralization aspect of it. So when I explain that to people, I would say 20% of them listen. 80% of them completely don't listen. But the ones that do listen, I always get a text a couple years later, and they're like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. You've changed my life." So it is what it is. You want to listen? Good for you. If you don't want to listen, have fun staying poor. That's your problem.
Yeah. I always ask people, look, what happens if Vitalik dies tomorrow? And they just get speechless. They don't say anything. Well, what will happen is, the policies will break and Ethereum is going to zero. Because you need that figure, that man on top of the chain, and that's why it's centralized. You need him to continue the policies and continue to, gather the team. But it doesn't make sense. That's why that's why Satoshi never revealed himself to the world, because he knew it had to be completely decentralized. And that includes not having one person in charge. And he was really smart about that. So, and now we have Bitcoin spreading as payment rails with Twitter. So even more decentralized. Now you can send dollars, you can send fiat over Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is now carrying the dollar on its back. What do you think about that?
So Jack's a smart guy.
Jack Mallers
he's a really smart guy, and he understands, and he's being very strategic on how he talks and how he says things. He realizes that taking on, I would say, the powers that be directly, right, and saying, listen, I have something to compete with you, is incredibly difficult. So what he's doing is really interesting. He's leveraging the power of the Bitcoin network, right? And saying, hey, listen, you don't really necessarily need to use Bitcoin, the commodity, Bitcoin, the asset. You could just use the Bitcoin network instead. And you could just send fiat over the network using Lightning, and it works much better than anything you have today. But it's interesting because in the process of doing so, what you do is you expose a lot of people to the Bitcoin commodity anyways, right? So, it's funny to see him on CNBC and CNN doing all these things, and the anchors always try to poke and prod and say, what do you think of Bitcoin, the commodity? And he never answers, right? He always talks about the network and the rails. It's very smart on his end because he's not directly, attacking, right? But at the same time, he is exposing people tremendously to Bitcoin, the commodity, at the end of the day, right? El Salvador, you have Bitcoin's only been legal tender for 30 days. You have what you've had historically in the history of El Salvador, you only have 1.8 million bank accounts. Bitcoin's been legal tender for 30 days, only 30 days. And 3 million El Salvadorians have downloaded the Chivo app. Like, if you don't think that the central bankers and all the bankers are looking at that and absolutely, forgive me for cursing, shitting their pants, you have no idea, man. These people are freaking out because it breaks all the narratives. Because the narrative that they're trying to sell is like, listen, without the KYC system, without the banking system, without the bureaucrats, the whole world would collapse. And El Salvador in 30 days proved, nope, you could just let people download a wallet and they could transact freely. No problem, no issue at all, right? So it completely breaks their narrative, right? That's why what's happening in El Salvador is so important. And a lot of these people in El Salvador, they might be receiving remittances from the United States using the Bitcoin network, right? Receiving, dollars or whatever it is. But I guarantee you that a percentage of those people are keeping their money in Bitcoin now because they've been exposed to this Bitcoin network. It does this. Let me just put a little bit of money into Bitcoin. And as number go up technology does its thing, right, then they become converted. And they're like, wow, why would I hold dollars if I could hold Bitcoin and it actually goes up in value? Why would I do something so stupid? And that is why the mainstream media and Steve Hanke and all those guys, that's why they're freaking the F out. That's why every day on Twitter, they're like, Nayib Bukele is a dictator. He's a danger to democracy. He's a danger to... It's so freaking stupid, but it's because they're scared.
I have a
pearl. They should be scared.
I have a pearl for you about Steve Hanke, but later, just in a few minutes. But since we're talking about... Oh, there's one thing I love about Jack Mallers. He only announces it when it's done. It's working. Go check it out. He never speaks about it. Oh, this is going to be ready tomorrow. This is going to be ready next month. No, he just says, this is working right now. He shows it on the screen. Go check it out and use it. And this is a really good strategy too. But anyway, we're talking about... sorry. Go.
No, you always get that one genius, that one Steve Jobs out of your generation. And
Jack Mallers is definitely that individual. He's so talented, so smart, and he's changing the world. All of us content creators, we just cover the news. We try to stay whatever, but it's really Jack Mallers that's really moving the envelope. Of course, we all have our role to play, but that guy is, he's a legend already,
Yeah. So since we're talking about El Salvador, and let me just ask you something about the Bitcoin law. So the Bitcoin law was really attacked at the beginning because people started to say that this will force the the service providers, the shop owners to accept Bitcoin. And I was trying to explain, actually, in my interview with Ugly Old Goat, which was 2 months ago or something like that, I can't remember, I was discussing the Bitcoin law with him, and I explained this, and I said, well, they are actually not obliged to accept Bitcoin because they can convert it automatically to dollars as soon as they get the payment. So in fact, they are forced to accept someone to pay it in Bitcoin, but they can actually automatically transform that Bitcoin into dollars as soon as it gets to their wallet. What's your opinion on the Bitcoin law on this topic?
Yeah, so look, it goes back to what I was saying. Let me backtrack. So let me point a bigger picture to everyone. The people in charge, okay, the people that rule the world are also the people that own the media. Okay, in the United States, around 6 companies own 90 to 95% of all the big media companies. Okay, so they're in bed with the government and they're in bed with the bankers. Okay, when you have something happening in El Salvador, it's a threat to the US dollar hegemony. So you have all the mainstream media, Financial Times, The Economist, New York Times, they will all come out and try to protect the powers that be. And they do that by selling a fake narrative, right? It's so funny because they call Nayib Bukele a dictator, but at the same time, they don't speak about what's happening in Australia. Nothing. Australia's okay. But Nayib Bukele, dictator, so what they're doing is they're trying to shape a narrative and they're trying to paint this guy to be a criminal, right? They're trying to paint this guy to be a crook, right? They're funding the opposition parties as well, right? To kind of, come up with the fake protests. It's so funny because it's like massive protests and there's like 5 people in the crowd. You could clearly tell that those people in the crowd have no idea what Bitcoin is. They've been paid to be there and to hold up the signs, right? And one of the narratives that they try to sell is that Nayib Bukele is forcing the people of El Salvador to use Bitcoin. That's not the case at all. What he did force, right, and a lot of Bitcoiners feel kind of iffy about this, I'm neutral on this matter, is that he did force the merchants to accept Bitcoin, right? But he didn't force anybody to hold Bitcoin. He didn't force anybody to use Bitcoin if they didn't want to. You could keep using the dollar and ignore Bitcoin.
Exactly.
But one of the best responses that he had, and it was absolutely hilarious, he said, listen, if you want to keep using Western Union and paying the $30 fee, you're more than welcome to do so.
Yeah.
But with Bitcoin, it's almost free. So you get what I'm trying to tell you? So the incentive is there. So they can come up with all the propaganda and all the BS. But at the end of the day, people aren't stupid. If you see a system that allows you to receive money from overseas for almost for free, why wouldn't I use that system for using the other system that charges me up to 30% that I physically have to go to a location to receive cash? Do you get what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah, exactly.
So what you're seeing was an attack by the big powers that be, the powers that want to keep the dollar as a global reserve currency so that the U.S. could keep using the world, right, to outsource its debt, which the U.S. has been doing for a very long time.
Yeah, so what was I saying with in this interview with Algio is that actually he's not forcing anyone to accept Bitcoin. He's the only thing that you can say he's forcing people to do, the shop owners and service providers, is that they are forced to allow the customer to pay in Bitcoin. But during the process from wallet to wallet, this can automatically be converted into dollars. So he's actually not forcing anyone to accept Bitcoin. They can just receive in dollars in their wallets. So this was a non-topic. This was just something else that economists like Steve Hanke and other guys like him in the States were just using to criticize Nayib Bukele,
they all work for the same thing, right? They're all, their same goal is to keep the dollar at the top.
I
Right?
wonder.
That's
I wonder
the
if they
only
are
thing
getting
care
paid.
about.
I wonder if they are getting paid for that.
I would not be surprised at all. I know that Steve Hanke, he's a professor at Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins is, they kind of have the think tank for U.S. Kind of global strategy, right? So that maybe that comes into play. But the real question you should be asking yourself is, why does this old man care so much, right? And that, if you ask yourself that question, then you start to say, wait a second. And then you start to put in together the articles that are coming out from mainstream media. Why are they not covering on what's going on in Australia? Why? What's going on in Australia is absolutely horrible. They're beating the crap out of people for their health, right? Even though the island doesn't have that many, I don't want to say the word, but that many cases, right?
Yeah.
So,
by the way, I was banned from Twitter. I had a previous account with almost 2,000 followers on Twitter. I was banned from Twitter because I was talking about Australia and characterizing their government as something very similar in the 30s in Europe. So I don't want to say the word also, but because I wrote the word on Twitter, I was banned also from Twitter. And now I have 200 followers, and I had 2,000 before. So yeah.
So Twitter and YouTube, unfortunately, they've become political, right? So you kind of have, there's many tweets that I've written that come from the heart that I just save to drafts and I never send. And anytime I do comment on things, I have to be extremely careful with how I word it, right? Because it's just become so crazy like that. It's very unfortunate. I don't think that it's going to last forever. And the reason I say that is because YouTube and Twitter, they've become so large that they've become larger than any individual or any company that owns them, right? They've just become too big. Right. So, it could be right now that, the some political parties have control over those networks. But over the long run, I suspect that's not going to be the case. Yeah.
It makes me think, why is, being Twitter's founder, Jack, and being Jack so much pro, freedom and Bitcoin and all that, the big Bitcoin dream, freedom to everyone. How can he allow that this continues to happen on Twitter? But this is just a question that I would like to leave in the air. But if you wanna comment,
yeah. So that's actually a pretty good question. So I think that the platform has gotten so big, and it has so many political ties to what we call the deep state in the U.S. Without getting too conspiracy theory, all that means is the bureaucrats that stay in power after every politician. They don't get elected. Their job is to work in government, right? I suspect that a lot of these social media platforms have been coerced by government forces, right? So I suspect the reason that, I'm not trying to apologize for Jack or anything like that, but I suspect that a lot of the things, one of the reasons that Jack is so for Bitcoin, right, is because he realized that any centralized entity will eventually get coerced by the government. And I think that's what we're seeing with Twitter and with YouTube, unfortunately, right? I think you have a lot of puppet masters at the top that are really saying, I don't like that, I don't like this, I don't like that. And Jack realizing like, what can I really do? Right? Think about it. The thing's gotten so huge, that you think that it's him, calling all these shots, banning all these people, but it's gotten too big to control, to dictate. So I think even he has realized, the only way to really build out a network that anyone can't coerce, no matter their political leaning, is a decentralized network. And the only one that exists in my mind is Bitcoin.
Okay, we were talking about Steve Hanke. I have a pearl for you. Let's have the pearls now. And there is this clip of a video that I have here, which I would like you to listen to, and then you can comment what this guy is going to say.
guess you could subsidize it. That's in fact what they're going to do in El Salvador. They're going to pay people to actually use Bitcoin. They're going to give everybody $30 to put it in their wallet as an incentive to use Bitcoin, because no one wants to use it. So the taxpayer is going to have to pony up $30 for every Bitcoin wallet that's opened up to entice people to use the thing. Now, what they'll do, by the way, they will spend the $30. Some might speculate, just hold on to the $30, hoping that it goes up. But they'll spend the $30 in Bitcoin, and that will be the end of it. And then they'll have to subsidize the thing and sweeten it up with another $30 or $50 or $100. And where does that come from? It comes from El Salvadorian taxpayers. This is the biggest con job that I've seen. And it's amazing that the Bitcoin crowd has conned the president of El Salvador into this. But I think his brothers are on the take, and I think he is. He's getting something out of this. You say, Hanky, why are they doing this? They're pretty much dark forces behind it. It makes no sense unless someone is getting paid. Someone behind the curtain is slipping greenbacks, not Bitcoin, into President Bukele's pocket, his brother's pockets.
So basically, he called Nayib Bukele a corrupt, and that someone is paying him in Bitcoin to do this. Actually, what we think he is getting in dollars to speak like this, right? What's your comment about this?
Look, it's funny. I want you to remember, I want everyone to remember this word, projection, right? And that's what a lot of these people do, right? Is that they accuse the opposition of what it is they are doing themselves, right? You saw this with the IMF tweet where they called Bitcoin a privately issued currency. Central bank currencies are privately issued. We don't know how they're issued. They're just issued at a whim of somebody. That's a lot more private than mining Bitcoin and then it being publicly issued for everybody to see, right? And again, right, you're saying you hear him saying the dark forces, right? How does the U.S. Congress work, right? All those Congress people insider trade. They're trading, and then they pass a law, and then the things that they bought go up in value because of the law they bought, right? Isn't that corruption?
Yeah.
You know, you have the Fed presidents just caught a couple days ago is a huge debacle in the United States for purchasing the assets with the money that they printed, and they happen to own the assets that they purchased. That's corruption. So again, this is why I say the word projection, right? He is projecting what it is, right? U.S. politicians, the ones that are in charge of the money printer, the people in Congress are doing themselves, right? At the end of the day, he conveniently leaves out, right, why Bitcoin is important in El Salvador. Put the commodity aside, okay? Put Bitcoin, the asset aside. Put that aside, right? A huge percentage of the economy in El Salvador is remittances, meaning people receiving money from overseas, okay? Yeah. Today, you're spending a huge percentage of those remittances on fees, right? That's like a tax, essentially, right? So if I wanted to send someone money from El Salvador, if I wanted to send them dollars, if I want to send them $100, I would have to pay $3 or some more than that. I have no idea, right? But it could be up to 30%. If I wanted to use Strike, right? If I wanted to use Chivo, it's almost free.
Yeah.
Right. So again, put Bitcoin aside, put Bitcoin, the commodity, aside. Hanky conveniently leaves all of this out. And the reason he leaves it all out is because it highlights the failures and the limitations of the dollar, of the fiat dollar.
Exactly. That's disgusting. Just, not talking about the stuff that really matters. But talking about disgusting, and you said this also in one of your videos about Charlie Munger, another guy you must love. I have another pearl. Let's just watch this one. And then you can comment on what Greg Foss said about Charlie Munger.
And that's the key, Mark, because it's my kids that are at risk from these politicians that have pulled forward gains that my kids should be able to live. They pulled them forward for my generation of selfish boomers who are too soft to actually, pay the piper in the present. They want to, Andrea, what her name is, AOC, whatever her name is, we'll just print more money and we're going to tax the rich. And it's disgraceful. It's intellectually laziness. Some of it's purely conflicted, old Munger there, Charlie Munger. First of all, who talks to a 94-year-old man about technology? And secondly, do you think he would actually want Bitcoin to succeed based on all his exposure to the financial players that Bitcoin will disintermediate? Right. Charlie Munger, with all due respect, go fuck yourself, okay? You are giving very poor advice to my children. And for that, I will never forgive you. You're a conflicted old fuck, okay? And do not do this because it's criminal behavior. You can edit that.
Oh, man. Those are strong words about Charlie Munger. What are your words about him?
Listen, so the thing that he said was, he believes that Bitcoin is a horrible step for humanity, right? And I had a Simply Bitcoin episode about a week later, and I brought someone from Venezuela, right? I brought him on and I said, listen, do you think Bitcoin is disgusting for humanity? Because you have to understand something, right? In developed countries, Bitcoin is seen as a speculation, right? You say, okay, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to opt out of the financial system, but I also believe number go up technology. What Venezuelans see Bitcoin as is a whole different story. They see it as a way to survive, right? As a way to hold their wealth and for their wealth not to be debased, right? You also had similar stories in Afghanistan, right? Of, Afghanistan after the Taliban took over, it was cut off from the legacy financial system completely, right? The people had no option. You know what they did have? They had Bitcoin, right? So if you think that's disgusting, you're a fucking slave master. That's what you want. You want people to be poor. You want people to be enslaved so that you financially benefit yourself. I don't know. That is the most selfish thing I've ever heard. But again, if I was personally, my generation got so fucked over, right? I'm 29 and so fucked over, right? That we don't have a choice but to Bitcoin. We don't have a choice. There is no choice, right? You saw what happens when we tried to play the stock game, right? With the GameStop, with the AMC. They didn't even play it fair. They shut down the trading because they did the people, the guys at the top, Wall Street, didn't want us to win. And let's look back at 2008 when this really started happening and Bitcoin was born a year later to January 3rd, 2009, right? Why was Bitcoin born? It says it in the Genesis block. It says it. Chancellor on the brink of the second bailout for banks, right? Exactly. What does that mean? Satoshi knew that the government would keep bailing out the banks. So what happens when the banks know that you would bail them out? They keep doing the bad behavior that made them crash in the first place. And no banker went to jail for what happened in 2008. And you know who had to pay the price? Main Street. Us, the average Joe, the average individual, right? The young people. We had to pay the price so that the Wall Street people could stay rich and stay wealthy even after they did such a fuck up that they almost destroyed the entire financial world. And of course, Charlie Munger doesn't talk about that. He would rather talk about Bitcoin that potentially gives people in my generation a shot and freedom so that we don't have to deal with these crazy psychopaths that have been debasing our money.
Exactly. Oh man, we almost reached the end of this live stream today, but before we actually wrap up, I would like to ask you something. So in the FU Money podcast, we have a giveaway, and not fiat and no shitcoins, and the giveaway is given in Bitcoin, the only sound money. And every week we give $100 in Bitcoin to someone that that predicts the price of Bitcoin by the end of the live stream we have on Saturdays. So by the start of the live stream on Saturdays, they have to fill a form with the prediction of the price of Bitcoin by the end of the stream. And the one that gets closer to that number gets the giveaway. But for that, they have to watch the interweek videos and get one number they have to sum up and also add it to their answer of that prediction on Bitcoin. So today I'm going to ask you to choose one number for the giveaway that will be given next Saturday.
I'm going to choose the number 1.
That's cool. That's cool, man. Thank you for that. So this was our number time here at the FU Money podcast. Okay, so before we wrap up, this was an amazing chit-chat with you, and I really enjoyed your asking you the questions and having your answers. But before that, let me just ask you, where can people find you?
Yeah, you could follow me on Twitter at bitvolt7. You could also search Nico. I'm pretty sure I pop up pretty quickly. If you want to see what I'm thinking, what I'm commenting on, I usually either talk about Bitcoin or I trash communists, right? And you could also find me on YouTube. You could, you could find my podcast channel, BitVolt. I don't post there very often. I post there if I have something good, but where you can't see me almost every day except for Sunday is Simply Bitcoin on YouTube. And we kind of do pretty much what you do. Just talk about Bitcoin, talk about the news and all that good stuff. So yeah. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, sorry. Just 1 second because I forgot. No, not that. Sorry. I want to try to pull up your YouTube channel here. And Simply Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
There you go. I had searched it already. So this is the YouTube channel, of course, Simply Bitcoin. It's the podcast, and Nico and Phil are the hosts every day, every weekday, right? You don't have it on weekends.
We have it on Saturday. That's one of our best episodes is Saturday morning, and then Sunday we take a break, and we'll be back on Monday.
I mean, so that's Sunday's exactly what I do. We don't post. I also take a break on Sundays. I have live streams during the week, and then the biggest one is on Saturdays with the giveaway. Yes. So I also take Sunday off. So you may find Nico here watching. Go watch his podcast. Subscribe to the podcast. It's really good. It has the daily fail, memes, and news, and every day you can watch new stuff. It's really cool. And also find Nico here on Twitter. This is your profile, right?
Yes.
And by the way, just a mention to Phil. This is his profile on Twitter. Follow both of them there. And also the Simply Bitcoin Twitter account. I have it all here. I just forgot the YouTube one. Okay, man. So that was really cool to have you here on the FU Money podcast. Thank you so much for joining, and you will be always welcome here anytime you want to join us. So thank you for the interview or chit-chat, as you want to call it. And let's see how Bitcoin is doing right now. I bet it's close to 60 now. Okay. 55. Oh, you are. Oh, you are seeing it. I don't have it on screen right now. I have to check it later.
I have a block clock right there. It tells me.
Oh, okay. Okay, man. Thank you very much. And let's talk soon again.
Appreciate it. Thank you, bro.
Okay, bye-bye. And that was it, guys. The interview with Nico from the Simply Bitcoin podcast. And also follow him on Twitter. And of course, the podcast itself, you can watch it every day except on Sundays. So you also have a podcast on Saturday, just not only the FU Money podcast, but also Simply Bitcoin if you want to watch it. And guys, just before I leave, let me just leave it on screen here. The usual links that you can follow also for this podcast, not just Simply Bitcoin. You can follow both and follow the two Twitter accounts there. The one on top is my personal account, and then the second one is the account of the podcast. The last one is the Telegram group that you can also follow and join. More than 500 people discussing Bitcoin and the markets in general, but we try to avoid shitcoins at the most, so I had to ban some people already. But not wanting to be mean, just join and we'll be very, very welcome. And let me just remove that. So, and I will now leave you guys with the final words. If you enjoyed this content, just gently touch the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to hit the notification bell and select all to get notified every time that I get live or I upload a video. So just do it, and we will be really glad to have you following this, okay? So guys, really enjoyed being here today with Nico, and I hope you enjoyed the content today, and I will see you in the next one.